everybody. My guest on the show today is Aras Toker, co-founder and CEO of Peace of Mind. He's a dad of a young child. He's a husband, and he's a soccer. I don't know if crazy is the word. We talked a little bit about this. We'll find out more. And this might come up. But Aras, so good to have you here today. Everybody listening, I met Aras through a mutual friend and podcast guest. And when I heard about him, I said, I got to have this person on my podcast. I am so excited we're here today. Thanks for being here. Welcome.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks for having me. And I'm a crazy soccer fan, yes.
Crazy soccer fan. What's your team?
Originally, the one I grew up in is the Galatasaray. It's a big team from Istanbul, but I'm also a big Liverpool fan.
Okay.
So for all the Premier League lovers, shout out to Liverpool.
There it is. Yeah. So as you can hear, you're not American.
I'm not.
So you're Turkish and now living in America. So you're not in Turkey. I know where you're coming in. Where are you coming in today from?
I live in San Francisco. Well, actually near San Francisco in the Bay Area, a little bit north of it. I grew up in Turkey, in Istanbul, a crazy town of 18 million people, which I recently visited. It became even more crowded. But I moved to America when I was 18 for college. It was supposed to be a 4-year deal. Here we are 20 plus years later.
20 plus years. Yeah. Nice. All right. We're going to get right into it. We got a lot to talk about today. So what's kick us off here today? What's something you nerd out about besides soccer?
Good question. I think lately, or even when I was younger too, I was really curious, and I still am, about philosophy in kind of more in the sense of meaning of life kind of thing. It was always something fascinating for me because clearly there's no clear answer about what the meaning is. But at the same time, kind of just hearing from different perspectives, and I read on my own, just like curious how people perceive it and what motivates people to live a more fulfilling life. And that's something that is super interesting to me. And not because I'm practicing really fulfill life necessarily, but I'm aiming at it. At least that's a good one. But also, it's a really it makes you think, and that part is also good. On my own, I would just like ponder around in my backyard. I'm like, what's the really meaning here? Why are we here? So it's all kind of fun for me.
I know you've listened to a little bit of the show, or maybe quite a bit of it. You know that what comes next is I'm going to challenge this, and I'm going to ask you a follow-up question. I'm going to ask you, and I'm willing to share mine too. Like, what have you, for you specifically? Because, I'll give you my opinion here. I believe the meaning of life is unique to each of us. For you specifically, what do you see as a meaning of life? And I'm not asking for like the gospel or the truth, but like, what have you, from somebody who's studied this, what have you come to realize about yourself?
I think the meaning of it, in my opinion, is in the short period of time, and I call it short, even though you may live 80, hopefully more. How much of a dent can you really make by leaving this place a tad bit better than you took it with, or you started with? So I think at the end, I read something about there's 100 billion people actually lived and died. So ever since the
100 billion,
100 billion is the number. So if you look at all the people, not obviously currently, but in the past, like there has been so many lives coming in and out. What did these people leave? And who are that, like, let's call it the engine of people that, moved us. And how much of a dent did they make? And I think a more fulfilling life, or somewhat of an interesting life, will be to be able to say, hey, listen, like it was somewhat of in my own world, it doesn't have to be this revolutionary thing. It could be just, raising a kid, that kid became more, in tune with their society, neighborhood, and somehow like aware. So that could be fulfilling right there. So that's what it is. It doesn't have to be this crazy, grandiose idea or a fulfillment. Mm-hmm.
Well, the other thing I heard you share that landed for me when you first answered this was sounds like also for you, the meaning of life is the journey through life. Cause you mentioned like the exploration, the inquiry of it.
Yeah. I think it stems from, Jason, like, and I wasn't self-aware before I went through the sickness, which is nothing to kind of talk about primarily here, but it actually did change my life. Before that, I was more of an immigrant in this country, try to make money, try to Wall Street. Here's a ladder I want to climb. It all seemed like the right path, but it wasn't something that I necessarily wanted. It was more about what, opportunities in front of me or the people that told me about that will be good life. And then going through a physical kind of, painful, 10 years where I had the surgeries and things like that, you realize that, meaning of life or things that will make you happy is definitely not something specifically about dollar amounts or the earnings, but in little things. And in that journey is the happiness, right? So that's even in the painful times, we find little glimpses of happiness. So I think I realized, you're right. I think it's more of a journey of the whole thing. And it's not like ending or here, I hit it, I got the meaning. And that part is actually landed on me. And I want to live a life that doesn't let me forget about that part and never take anything for granted as well. So
yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. All right, Aras, what's something that's inside your comfort zone that other people either will not do or they're very uncomfortable doing?
I would probably think meeting people is something that I really enjoy. It's like I heard some people get nervous, and obviously I'm like, what are they going to say? How are you going to break the conversation? I love it. The reason is I got really curious. How does this person perceive life? What are their narratives? And my mind goes to these things, even if I'm just getting their name down. I usually forget their name because of these reasons. I got really curious. The way they look, I already have my own perceptions. I'm like, okay, let's not have a perception. So it's a fun little game. And I would initiate, meaning if even random person, like I work in a co-working space and somewhere in the kitchen, let's say I just saw somebody say hi, maybe initiate just more than a hello, right? So I think it's a little bit more curiosity, to be honest. And I do enjoy it because I'm like, you don't know who you're going to meet.
Yeah.
And I think it's an opportunity without being obviously creepy and talking to every single person. But it's more, if an opportunity comes, I'll take it and I'll be the first person to kind of initiate. So I think that's a little bit in a uncomfortable place for some people. That's what that is more comfortable.
Yeah. I'm with you. I'm thinking back to the first time we met and I'm like, oh, this is a really easy conversation because this is where in my comfort zone too. I've shared this, people ask me questions on the show, and that's why I do the show. Cause sometimes I interview guests and I've never looked at them or spoken to them until about 1 minute before you press record, totally in my comfort zone. And then I have other people in my sphere that they're not interested, right? They need to know who is this Aras person? What are they up to? What's in it for me? Why would I spend the half hour? And I think you and I, we hit it off right away. I'm just like, this is great. Let's get curious about each other. So yeah, totally. So now I feel like we're on a matchmaking game to see if we have the same thing that's out of our comfort zone. So what's the other side of the coin for that for you? What's something that you're not comfortable doing and other people are really comfortable doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's first thing comes to my mind is probably related to language. Even though I've been here 20 plus years, English shouldn't be an issue. But when it comes to storytelling, whether it's a stupid little joke, excuse my language, or even just a deep story that I really want to tell it colorfully, I always ponder later on, oh my God, I should have told it this way. And it's just not as, I don't know, it's not easy for me is my point. Perhaps for a more natural, more English speaker, that it could be easier. I don't know if it's just a language, whatever it is. Maybe it's just not necessarily a language problem, but it's not easy for me. And I think I'm finding ways to storytell things more compelling and finding there's art to it. Absolutely. But still not natural for sure. Some people are amazingly natural. They don't need any training. So.
You're like, I'm finding ways to practice, like going on podcasts and,
Yes.
all these other things. That's
Challenge
great.
myself. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Do you find storytelling in your native language to be easier?
Good question. A little bit better. Yes. I
A
wouldn't
little bit
say that
better.
I'm like nailing it in Turkish, but
Yeah.
definitely it feels like the words will come up a bit more easier, and I'll pick my vocabulary is probably a little bit more like depth, and I can pick like the right word that could be more enticing in that context. So
Yeah,
those little
makes
nuances.
sense. Yeah, as you were saying that, I was obviously listening, and I was also thinking about my relationship with that. And I don't speak any other languages. I'm pondering over here how I feel about my storytelling ability, because I train people in this.
Yes.
And at the same time, I wonder how good I am sometimes. I'm like,
I think
not sure.
the little that I know about you from the first meeting, yeah, I feel like it's a fairly, audience grabbing, at least from, I don't know if it's eye contact or like you kind of get people to really, because it's all about that, right? Let them to really think about it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I do have a lot of training in it. I'm going to humble myself and say I do have a lot of training in it, but there's always room for more. I was actually talking to somebody, I was talking to a client about this day, marketing and telling stories in your marketing, because that's what people remember. And we were kind of walking through the hero's journey, if you know what that is. Yeah. Most people know what the hero's journey is, and how does that relate? Her question was, hey, I really want to tell this story of our company because it's a family-run company. I said, what's the hero's journey of your company? And then we had a really fun 45-minute coaching call about the hero's story of her. She runs a therapy practice, and it was really fun to hear, which is not that common to small family-owned in this day and age. A lot of them are owned by conglomerates now. It's really fun. So, and my guess also is if I was to ask you to tell us a story, I'd be like, wow, that was really good. My guess is this is partially your own internal critic, but we're not going to go straight down that route today.
I'll vicariously tell you stories.
Yeah, this will be the second time on. We'll really test this. So, Aras, give you 5 minutes. You get to broadcast out to the entire world. So you can pretend that the whole world's listening to this podcast. I know my numbers. That's not true. I would be very wealthy if that was true. It's not true, but a fair number of people listen. So 5 minutes, you get to give a speech to as many people as you want to hear it. What would you talk about? And at the end of your speech, what would you want us as the audience to do?
Yeah. I think I would talk about, and that's something that I genuinely got interested about what I'm doing right now at my company too, is things that we worry about in life. It's all about the perspective of what we should be looking at compared to some of the other people's difficulties or challenges that they're facing. And I think if I were to have a chance to talk to the entire world, I'll just say that not to diminish some people's worries and kind of compare them with others, but more about think your own worries or challenges and things that will stress you out or make you overwhelmed, and try to look at it from a larger perspective. And at the end, I think the best call to action is try to do things that are going to make you sleep better at night. And I think at the end of it, whether it's we kind of finagle our ways and do like things that, get us way through some of the challenges or kind of cut corners and shortcuts, I think that the answer is that will make you feel genuinely as a conscience, that will make you feel good, or at least sleep better at night, then do those. I know sometimes that's a longer route, but I've learned that, to be honest. And that I would not give away for anything. Like I would just, because and to me, that's peace of mind. I'm not trying to talk about the company that I started to, but
You're welcome to.
Yeah, it's important, to be honest. And because when we have our own, not just mental, but physical as well, wellness, I think to me, that's one of the wealth. And wealth, it's always conceived as a dollar amount here, not just here in the US, but the entire world. But there are different components of wealth. And I think one of them is financial, got it. But your physical and mental health are part of your wealth as well. And I think that's a key step. Not everything is about dollar amount. Things that will stress you out should be considered. And then you're eating away from your own happiness or kind of, sanity, if you will. And those are the things that we all should all consider. I think, as a call to action, I'll ask them to think about other things that will make them wealthy, whether it will make them more self-aware so they can ponder about meaning of life a little bit more. Because there are stages, right? You don't just wake up one day, oh my God, what's the meaning of my life? If you're going through struggles of every single thing is like, there's no stop, you're in this kind of a hamster wheel, most likely you're not going to think about those. When you have a moment to pause and kind of reflect on things in life, that's where you start to design or redesign your life in a way that you want it to be more meaningful to you. And I think, people, if they can realize that, I think that'll be a huge winning. So that will be my kind of message.
Yeah, I really hear that. I love that. What I hear in that is the more mindfulness, which would make a lot of sense based on what I know that what you do and what the company does. And, we'll talk more about this, but it makes a lot of sense as being mindful. And it's also interesting just thinking about that. And, I live in New York City, and I have friends who work in finance. That doesn't seem to be much of a thing, like the mindfulness. And I think it's becoming more of it. But my guess is when you were on Wall Street, there was not a whole lot of like conscious thought behind. You're like very reactive. You're like, what's going on today? Here's the numbers. How do I make the next buck? And we're actually going to talk more about, if you'd like to share, we're going to talk more about this after the commercial break, which we're going to go to right now. We'll be right back after this.
The Talking to Cool People podcast is brought to you by Jason Frizzell Coaching. Jason works with amazing people who are looking to find and develop their passion and purpose and create their journey to wherever it is they want to go. Check us out at jasonfrizzell.com, Facebook, or on Instagram. Jason loves hearing from anyone who thinks it would be cool to connect, to be coached, or to be a guest on our show. Email him at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com or DM him on Facebook and Instagram. And now, back to some more amazing conversation on Talking to Cool People.
Right. Aras, we're back.
Yay.
Now you get the nice, broad, curiosity-based, open-ended question, which sounds like it's right in your wheelhouse too. I love these kind of questions. So what else do you want me and everybody listening to know about you?
More than about just myself, and I would describe myself a little bit more as a curious person and also a passionate person about understanding the effects of mind and body and how they interact together. And also, how do you actually, in a workplace context, and because we spend a third of our lives, let's say 8 hours, and there are different times that you can do more, obviously, but
I want to pause you for a minute. You just said 8 hours.
Yes.
Who do you know who only works 8 hours a day? Maybe you now, but
no, not a lot of people, and that's sad. True.
Unfortunately,
that is true, and it's I'm nothing to say because it's absolutely right. But actually,
someday maybe
one day, maybe in Europe, maybe it's the different countries.
Yeah, there you go.
But I think it's interesting, Jason, that when we dig really deep with my co-founder Antonella about this idea that in workplaces, why are people burnout? And I think if you look at the specific science behind it, you hear about unmanageable workloads, the bad relationship between the manager and the employee, and all these stem from the system it's not sustainable for people to be kind of in a meaningful or a kind of healthy way, right? So we're kind of grinding and getting more out of people. And there's difference between like grit and try to like get things done, the attitudes, and kind of pushing people to their limit. And in the sense of productivity, oh, Jason can take more. Okay, I'm going to ask him more so he can do 18 hours instead of 8 or 10. So, and we will eventually burn out unless we actually create systems in place. I got really curious about that piece, that current system that we're in, especially in the US, is not sustainable. We will burn out at one point. And there's an amazing Gallup survey, about 2,000 employees. 78% of them said that they've experienced burnout. And at some stage, either once or twice or kind of more common. And just to hear that, it's just crazy, because burnout doesn't happen overnight. It's not like, tonight I'm going to get burnout. So it's a gradual thing. So that means that people have been going through stress, and not just minor stresses, right? So they've been feeling that overwhelm for a long period of time, that it manifested into this kind of phenomenon now. And then they'll just, give up, or just their life kind of completely collapses for that period of time after the burnout. Now, what do we do in this society that we can actually do? Again, coming back to my small dents philosophy, what do I do, or what do we do as a company that could make those small dents that will improve the culture a tad bit more, or create a little bit more systemic changes that will make the employees realize, hey guys, we gotta protect our free time, our sleep, our movement. We gotta move our body. Like, these are things perhaps intuitively, like, okay, yes, I should move the body, I should eat healthy, but we don't, because the context is not really created. And a lot of times we're left alone, meaning, all right, Jason, Aras, go to this app, do meditation, do yoga. It'll be really good for you. You won't have burnout. It doesn't work that way, because if you're in that burnout state, let's be honest, and just because you did a meditation for 10 minutes, you're not going to feel better. It's more of a gradual thing. If you've been doing meditating, and then you have other things, approach this more holistically, then you have a kind of systems in place, essentially, that will actually yield a life that will avoid like these major stressors and also burnout. So that's what we got really curious about. And I feel like it's a very, very difficult behavior change, whether it's the individual employees or the employers or the team leaders to kind of embark on these kind of changes. But at least we're trying to make it as practical as possible for people to see, like, look at each other. Hey, I'm not the only person burned out. Let's collaborate on this, and then see collectively if we can get out of it. I think that's a key step, as opposed to individual. So I think that's what we're going after, that peace of mind anyways.
I love that. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about this before we wrap today, because I do want to talk about what you all do there. And I'm very excited for this next part of the show as a fellow curiosity person, right? And when we've spent a little bit of time together, but not that much. You don't know a lot about me. I'm so curious what you want to ask me that I can answer for you and for everybody listening. So what's the question you have for me? And I'm buckling up. I think it's going to be a doozy. No pressure, but
no pressure. I'm really curious. Again, actually, not knowing somebody, like, remember we talked about this? It's actually, I'm curious, and my mind is already going. I'm really curious about your relationship with your kid in a way that things that will make that kid, like the bond between you and, was it a he, or I forgot? Was it a?
We have two. We actually we have a 6-year-old daughter and a almost 2-year-old son.
Yeah, 2-year-old son. I remember. Okay, so 2 kids. So let's talk about both of them. Your relation with them. What do you do that will make that relationship stronger, and you feel that there's that father-daughter, father-son kind of connection with them?
Oof.
I know it's tough.
That's a doozy. That's a good one. So I heard you ask it as, what am I going to do going forward, or what are we doing now?
Or what you've been doing, I guess, that will
doing
make that
holistically. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I know you're a father of young child as well, so you'll go through this. And you're 2, right?
2.5. Yep.
2.5. Yes, you're 2.5. So, when with the 6-year-old, she's pretty good at expressing her needs, and I'm pretty clear on what she likes doing now.
Mm-hmm.
So I really try to, with her, when we get we call it daddy time, which is at this age is very sweet. I feel like it's not always going to be this way, so enjoy it now. People listening that have teenage daughters are like, What I try to do is a combination of things that I know we like doing together while also introducing her to new things and figuring out what it is that really gets her excited. And we're still in the phase of her life where just kind of doing stuff together still really excites her. I'm excited for you and your partner to experience this too, because it's just this age. So that's the thing, is like being intentional about, hey, like, do you want to go and I'll just tell you straight up, we're watching the Prehistoric Planet show on Apple Plus, which is phenomenal. She loves dinosaurs. So I'm like, hey, like, let's watch this new show together. And it's unbelievable. And so introducing her to new things like that. And also when I sense that she's bored, not trying to force it on her, because that just sucks as a kid. I mean, I don't remember having a lot of stuff forced me, but I know parents that force stuff on their kid, they get bored. And my daughter is obviously she's my wife and I together, and my wife and I both get bored very easily. I'm like, it's highly likely our 2 kids are going to be like that. So with a daughter, that's what we do. With a son, the specific thing I've been doing with him is introducing him to my music.
I love that.
I play guitar, and I'm a big music person. So I like a very eccentric types of music, and listening to music with him. And he loves to dance, I've found out, which is funny because I don't love to dance. I mean, I can be persuaded, but just with him, it's like introducing him to like music and introducing him. I'm a big movement person as well. Introducing him to being outside a lot. I like being outside. So like just introducing him to those things. And it's interesting. And you've seen this as a father of a 2.5-year-old, is you can kind of start to tell what resonates. So now our son does not want to be inside. He wants to be outside all the time.
Oh my God.
He wants to listen to music all the time. And I think that's not just because there is definitely an element of like, oh, daddy likes it, but there's also an element of like, oh, he just actually likes these things. Yeah. And it's starting to resonate. So that's what I do is with the older one, just to summarize, a combination of, hey, I know you like doing this, and I'm going to introduce you to new things. And with the little guy, just like, here's some cool stuff we can do together. And so far it's been great.
I love it. And
what a cool question.
I mean, I wanted to get outside of the kind of the coaching and like things that you do. My mind went there directly. I'm like, I'm actually curious about the way what not only what kind of father you are, but then also specifically what you're doing. So thanks for
great question, Aras. Thank you. Well, also it's free. It's free learnings for you as a father who does not have a 6-year-old yet.
There you go. You know what?
We'll have to have you back on here in 10 years, and we'll be like, you're like, what do you do? And I'm like, I try to avoid them at all costs. Like they're annoyed by me. I'm annoyed by them. We give hugs, and that's it. I'm being facetious. I hope it doesn't come to that, but
no.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the things for anybody who is a parent listening. You just actually don't know as they start to grow and they start to become their own, like, opinionated human. Like, you don't know. They might quite frankly be complete assholes, and they might be so good. And going back to what you said about the meaning of life is like my wife and I doing our best with just doing the best we can with what we know how to do. And I always, I don't know your experience with parenting, but I find it interesting because you can't really read a book about it. I mean, you can read books when they're babies about how to keep them alive, but like they become like, 2.5. Your little dude has all sorts of opinions now, is my guess, and all sorts of things he likes or doesn't like. And it's like, nobody told us how to do this, and we just figure it out.
Yeah, I think the playbook doesn't necessarily work.
The playbook, yeah. Even though there's been 100 billion of these things that have happened over human history. Yeah.
Still couldn't game the system.
Great question. I love that. Thanks, Aras. All right. I'm scared to stay in the hot seat, so I'm going to take the microphone back, the hosting microphone, or I feel like you might really get me here. I'll have to come on your podcast sometime if you ever. I don't know if you have one actually, but
yeah, we were thinking about maybe we will. Yeah.
Good. I'd like to come on and you can grill me. So what are you passionate about?
I'm really passionate about health and well-being. And I believe that's because that's a kind of fundamental thing. If both mentally and physically we are well, we're better decision makers, we're better parents, we're better people in general, we're more mindful, we're more empathetic. And if they're not, a lot of the challenges that we face and why people sometimes get angry quickly or just kind of like had an outburst of emotions, that doesn't mean that's bad, but negatively impacting the other person across. And if you kind of in a kind of balanced place in life, mindfulness is a big part of it, but also physically taking care of the body, eating the right food and sleeping. And these are so fundamental that I realize, again, as a person at 22-year-old living the crazy life in New York, and you're from New York, so I actually was this crazy guy that would go out on a Sunday night. And coming from that to a life that is just, again, being mindful and also a little bit more self-aware. I wouldn't call myself, super kind of aware about everything around me, but I just at least trying to be, having that growth mindset is important. But yeah, I think I'm passionate about how to actually implement that, not only in me, but instill it on other people. Again, the biggest value that we can give to other people is whatever skill sets that we gained over the life, for whatever reason that we learned that skill set, how do we actually effectively share it and allow other person to kind of experience that, not to impose on them, not to kind of force it, but can they be influenced and inspired some of the things that you're doing? And that's what I think I'm very passionate about, whether it's like helping kids kind of talk about these. Again, I don't need to preach. It's more about like conversation or the observation that they're having, what kind of, how I perceive life, but also like what are the things that I'm doing in my life. And that's, I think, super, super interesting. And I'm really passionate about that. And it doesn't have to be a monetary gain out of this. Yes, we're trying to do things on the startup and try to see if we can make an impact on the workforce. But as an individual, that gets me really passionate.
Your investors are listening going, no, there needs to be a financial gain here. Let's be very clear. Love what you're doing. Yes, and.
Yes, and.
Which is the cool part about startups, that they can really be yes, ands. Absolutely. Exactly. Can be yes, ands. Make a good living, make an impact. Super cool. What's the thing you're most proud of?
My son, hands down. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's just the most meaningful thing. Again, I'm very happy with my wife too, from the perspective of what we built together. But to be able to have a human being that is half your DNA is a crazy concept. Again, I'm fairly new compared to you, but it just something makes me proud. Every little thing. Yeah. It doesn't have to be just good. Just things that he does, very fascinating. That makes me proud. So.
Nice. Let's say that he was listening to this 20 years from now, which if he was, that would be really impressive.
Your podcast is going, man.
Well, or even this, and he's like, hey, and you're like, hey, I was on a podcast. What do you want him to know 20 years from now that you could tell him right now? We're putting this out into the interwebs for all eternity, or until I pull it down off the podcast platform, which I hope never happens. But God, who knows if podcasts are going to be a thing 20 years from now? So who knows? Yeah. What do you want him to know?
I want him to know that he shouldn't be scared about meeting people. Again, I come back to that because so many things happened to me serendipitously because I met very interesting people that helped me to get to where I'm right now, not because it's any status or anything. It just like makes me continue my life. So we all need each other is my point. And I think I hope he understands that, or as he grows up and kind of realize the importance of that. I think one of the key steps is to be able to, in grad school, my teacher had this crazy comment. He said that, not get out of your comfort zone. I think find things that will get you out of comfort zone. And again, that's sounds counterintuitive, like, because naturally we want to be in the comfort zone. So he's literally said comfort zone is your enemy. I think the earlier you start on that is better. I think I would love him to see or understand and realize that the cool stuff in life is actually a little bit outside of the comfort zone, and at least peeking around and just kind of pushing ourselves.
Yeah. Just to offer one thing here. There's a coaching tool, and one of the taglines of that tool, it's not a tagline, but it's one thing is like, the unknown is where possibility lies. Because otherwise, like, what we know is what's possible for us. Like, I'm working in finance or working in sales. Like, I know it's possible to sell some of these products and make some good money, and what's unknown is possible, but it is scary. Like I'm consider myself an entrepreneur. You're definitely an entrepreneur. I've never heard an entrepreneur be like, hey, it was never scary. It was always just really easy. And I was, from day one of starting this company and not having a paycheck, it was really in my comfort zone. Like, by definition, just becomes a thing.
And being okay with that, as difficult, as unnatural as it feels like, is I think the recipe, man, right there. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. So Aras, as we start to head towards the virtual exit, I want to ask you next, if you are present to something that you are, or what's something that you were afraid that might be true about you?
I'm very impatient. And so I say that, and people say that outside, but I feel like I always defend, like, no, I want to get things done. It's just like, I want it to happen even yesterday, right? But what I'm afraid is it's actually stemming from some of my own, I guess, I don't know if it's insecurity or like having something right away, as opposed to have that pause to let things kind of simmer. I don't want to go through those emotions. I wanted like an answer quickly. I think that's what it is. And that's like because sometimes like the good things happen actually in that wait time, whatever you're waiting for. But I need to train myself. It's almost another skill that I need to learn. Okay, pause, man. Come on. Relax.
Yeah.
It's out of your hand right now. Just wait. So I have to kind of say this, but it doesn't come natural to me because I want an answer right away. I want that thing immediately. It's a strange skill. I don't know if I'll ever learn, but it is true.
Yeah, no, I'm smiling. People can't see us smiling. I'm smiling because that's exactly how I operate too. I'm very impatient. And the second part of this question is hilarious because I think we already know from knowing you is like, what do you do to compensate for it? You're like, well, I run a mindfulness and well-being company.
That's exactly what I thought.
It's so good.
Get outside of it.
Yeah. Like, I've shared this a few times. This question is always funny. And if you've ever seen Batman Begins, the first Christopher Nolan Batman film, and I guess this is from the comic books, but it's like the reason he's actually Batman is because he fell down a well, and the thing he was most scared of was like there was like hundreds of bats, and it was the thing that scared him the most. So he like became the thing. You're like, I'm really impatient, so now I teach people about mindfulness and ease and peace.
Yeah, I told you that it is stemming from my personal challenges of health I mentioned about, which had manifested into the mental side. And yes, we're going after the workplace right now, but that doesn't mean the product can only be in the workplace. Individuals can use this too. But essentially, what we thought, and I really thought too, the impatience, yes, that's part, but sometimes doing things together with other people is not only more fun, but also keeps you accountable, gets you a different perspective. And I think when it comes to wellness and overall well-being, it's a lot more interesting, especially if you're embarking on a bigger behavior change or like habit forming changes. Having an accountability partner, doing things in small groups, and having a coach like facilitating conversations and prompts And these are all, we're seeing the benefits on it, whether it's an engagement or overall behavior changes or people's overall resilience. We can measure those in our program too. But essentially, that's, I think, what's different about what we're doing too. Very much human-centered, whether it's the small groups or the coach. But in a nutshell, I guess that we didn't really talk to the what we do, and listeners may be curious about this too. So think about peace of mind as a tool in a toolkit for managers or business leaders, where they can actually offer this 6-week resilience coaching program for their employees to be able to make them more resilient and reduce their burnout. And we have specific ways of assessing and measuring what that is, how much of an impact we can do, increasing resilience and reducing burnout. But also we can actually change their overall feeling and also how they perceive the burnout. So these was actually, the program is very much designed towards gaining specific practical resilience building skills that they can implement in their lives. And we kind of handhold them, as well as we put them in a small group that allows them to actually do this with their colleagues. And it's a lot more fun and interesting. Also creates that experiential learning that you wouldn't have on a single guided app by yourself watching a video. So
yeah. And when we first met a few weeks ago, your co-founder is a doctor. This is all science. This is all very scientifically valid. And the thing that I really liked when we talked about the business, and we didn't connect just about the business, but I was just asking you, kind of what you all do there. What an easy ROI, especially in a tough job market to find good people. A lot of times people leave jobs because they're burnt out. And like you said, sometimes because of the manager, sometimes because of the role. And, being somebody who worked in sales at the end of the quarter, that's burnout central. Especially when I worked in like big enterprise deals where people always buy the last week of the quarter and, you work over Christmas and all these things. Like, it's just out there. And I don't think I ever was given any tools to deal with any of that other than you just kind of got to do it. And to me, the number one way to burn yourself out is to just kind of do it.
Exactly.
Like, there's no mindfulness there, right? It's like all like pure heads down focus, which is great. And then you collapse.
Because you're absolutely right. It's more of it's not about grit anymore. It's about the energy that you have. You're depleting and you're not replenishing that energy. So if anything, your decision-making is going to suffer if you're not protecting the sleep. There's all the sciences you mentioned about Dr. Antonella. She has a naturopathic background, very much looks at this holistically. And I love that because we're definitely using the science to be able to bring these forward in a meaningful way, the way that she designed it. But none of them are like revolutionary in the sense that we know these mindfulness works, meditation, all these stuff are actually working. But the way we bring it together, again, bring the human element is a key step. But not doing anything, inaction is the biggest thing against burnout, because the way, again, the system is set up is not sustainable.
Yeah. Well, as we start to wrap up here today, how can people connect with you, connect with the company, find you, find out all these that are going to go in the show notes as well. So like, what's a good way for people to learn more about you, what you're up to, maybe see some cute pictures of your kid, find out about peace of mind, however you'd like to connect.
We're very active on LinkedIn. Highly recommend for them to check out Peace of Mind, our LinkedIn page. And also we have, for people that are curious about the program itself, it's a 6-week program. We've been focusing on offering these teams, a minimum of 8 to 10 people. But individuals, if people want to themselves go through a resilience training program, we're opening them up on September. And
nice.
Right after Labor Day, we'll get specific on the dates. But on our website, peaceofmind.us will be the website for people to go. But I love them to kind of sign up. And it's actually going to be really interesting. Think about going through a 6-week program. Only commitment is probably hour and a half total a week. And you'll gain so many specific skills. And then you'll be able to experience that with other like-minded people that are trying to better their lives, but also do things that actually kind of create some of those habits that we talked about. So definitely LinkedIn page is great. We're active on Instagram too, but I highly recommend LinkedIn, as well as checking our website to get more details about the program.
Awesome, Aras.
And about myself,
so glad we made this happen.
They'll probably see me a little bit more. Again, LinkedIn is probably the best way to get more information about myself.
LinkedIn is the place. Yes. So good to have you on, my friend. I'm so glad we made this happen. So glad we got a chance to connect. And the tradition on the show for all my listeners, they always know I always ask for a guest to leave us with some sweet and short words to wisdom. And I will say most of my guests pay attention to this short, not all. And then I just have to do a little cutting of, take it to the cutting floor. It's in the recording and then I cut it for that. But yeah, what do you have for us? Something that the listeners can walk away with.
Little post-it note.
Yeah, exactly. For those young listeners, that's a piece of paper with a little bit of kind of stickiness, but not like. Funny thing about post-it notes, I just have to say, being from Minnesota, that's a 3M, which is a Minnesota-based company.
The product.
The post-it notes were a mistake. So this is like my random trivia piece for anybody listening.
Wow.
The glue that's on the back of post-it notes was a mistake, and I think the person who invented it was like, like a lot of these best inventions in the world they're just mistakes. And he's like, wow, this stays sticky, but doesn't get too sticky and doesn't leave a residue on the thing they leave it on. And now you got a multi-billion-dollar business. Ubiquitous. Amazing.
It'll ever continue. Exactly.
Amazing. And trademarked.
Trademark.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So what will go on that post-it note? I guess to summarize what we talked about today, leave the world a tad bit better than you began. That'll be my little message.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on. Best of luck to you, the rest of the Peace of Mind team. I know you're doing great things in the world. Best of luck to you, or not even the best of luck, just good vibes, good energy. I am not a soccer fan. I'm an NFL fan. So Liverpool sounds great because I don't really care. I don't have a team. If you were a 49ers fan, I would say you beat us in the playoffs 2 years ago. But I still like you anyway because I was a big Joe Montana fan growing up. And yeah, we'll have to have you come back on again sometime soon and catch us up on everything that's up new with you.
Thank you, man. Big NFL fan.
Thanks so much.
I love sports in general, but wanted to thank you. Really, I really enjoyed this conversation.
Excellent.
I didn't know how the hour passed, actually, to be honest. And
there you go.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you, man. Great.
Thanks, Aras.
To have this conversation.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook and give us a shout out, or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.